Glen, who's going to speak next, I first heard him speak, and he was talking about the landscape scale and applying it at that scale. And Glen's model also incorporates the financial implications of these different scenario planning. So we thought that would be an interesting piece to also add here. So invite Glen to come up.
Make sure when I click in the video, hopefully I can figure that out. Well, excited to be here. Thank you. I'll just say I feel like a very welcomed outsider. Dana and Janine, thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm going to try and do two ambitious things in a very short time. I'm actually going to spend only a little bit of time talking about a tool, but I'm actually going to spend more time talking about what we learned from doing tools, because that to me felt more valuable in this cohort of folks. So, a 1-minute experiment. I'm going to click through images, track your thoughts as I click through the images, and then I'd love for this to be interactive. I'm actually going to ask someone to volunteer. So, what did you think? As you saw those images, what did you think about it? Would love for someone...
Boxy.
What's that?
Boxy. I
Boxy?
don't know, like, it's not maybe not a real word, but...
Abstract painting.
Interesting.
Felt myself zooming in to more and more interesting.
Yes, okay. I'm sure there's a lot more really interesting answers. How many of you thought about, that's a map, and I'm somewhere in that map? It might have been a little bit hard to see because we zoomed in on this room.
Oh.
So there's an interesting human nature to put yourself in the map, to contextualize the information you are seeing, and ideally find a way to have a cause and effect. That if I take an action, that there's an outcome. And I think the best way to explain this phenomena is to use an example. So when I was a young boy, we belonged to AAA, I still do, and my favorite part of AAA was going and getting free maps. I'm dating myself, but boy did I love those maps. And I probably spent sometimes hours looking at maps, because I always wanted to see, where was I? Now, the funny thing is, people don't really use these maps anymore, by the way. Instead, they use Google Maps or Waze or other types of applications. So this is, no joke, around 8:15 I pulled this up and I said to myself, how do I get to Memorial Union? Should I walk? Should I take a cab or an Uber? And the key to this is it's all about improved decision making. I was the end user. I had a decision to make. And I had to get from A to B, but what I needed was local context. This is my second time to the HU campus. I didn't know where to go. So I needed to know the roads, the real-time traffic. I needed to know options. Should I drive? Should I walk? And there was a benefit of me using that tool. Shorter transit time. I knew I'd get here on time. I knew I could socialize, build that network. And was there an impact to society? Actually, no. Oddly enough, there's research that says the use of Google Maps and Waze hurts society, by the way, by flooding congestion down side streets. Ask me if you want to know more. Unintended consequences, very important. So here's the thing. At one point in time, Google Maps was the most widely used app in the entire world. Right now it's top 5 or so, because there have been other apps that have come about, but it is because it puts you in the map. That's the key. Google Maps puts you in the center of the map, and you can make a decision that's better for you. The problem is, today, that just doesn't exist for the natural environment. There is no way to put the world's most critical decision makers in the map regarding nature. Unfortunately, what I thought was human nature, to put yourself in the map, unfortunately, because of how society is structured, we've disconnected human and nature, almost to the point that it's a paradox. I might even say human nature is an oxymoron in how we treat the natural environment today. So, what's needed? Put every critical decision maker in the map regarding natural resource decisions. And you do that by doing exactly what Google Maps did for us as users. Local context and risk. Importantly, the ability to evaluate options and solutions and quantify the benefits. That's very, very important because, as other speakers said earlier today, unless there are incentives, unless there's some benefit, no one will use it. And importantly, you have to account for things that have never been accounted for, like nature. Who would have thought that we would have to do that? So I'm now going to transition and apply this thinking to a tool we've been doing in California, specifically focused on water. To Janine's point, obviously storing of water, purifying of water is really quite important. So this is a very simplified schematic. It's not quite the water cycle, but this is essentially what happens in California. So I'm from San Francisco, but born and raised in the Central Valley in California. And we have the Sierra that stores our water. Unfortunately, 2/3 of the water falls in the north, 2/3 of the water is used in the south, 2/3 of the water falls in the winter wet season, but 2/3 is used in the irrigation season in the summer. So we have a huge spatial temporal problem. And unfortunately, storage is a huge issue in California. Consequently, these simple lines show that over time we have depleted the Central Valley aquifers where we store water by the tune of about 170 million acre feet. So that's about 555 trillion gallons of water over the last 70 years or so. So much that NASA says California is running out of water. Now that's a problem because in the epic drought of 2011-2015, we were incurring about $3 billion of losses each year for California. Because we grow about half of the nation's vegetables and about 1/3 of the fruits, all in that area, So there was this question, well, could we get more water back into the ground? And the answer is yes. There are ways to restore nature to put waters back to the floodplains. And there's this concept of on-farm recharge that really is about having put more water onto farms and allow that to percolate back in the floodplains. Those floodplains is where now there are farms. So we invented, in addition with sustainable conservation, funded by philanthropy, a groundwater recharge assessment tool. What it simply does is help irrigation or water storage districts, of which there are about 500 in California, answer these questions. Where is recharge best done? When should it be done? How much can we capture? And how much overdraft can we address? This is important because in California, for the first time ever, you have to sustainably manage groundwater. It is a legal mandate now required by the regulatory agencies. And so I am going to hopefully show a video if I can get this to work. Is there a way to click on? Okay. Okay, actually it's working. Thank you, Dean. So this is not as charismatic as the other video. This is a quick click through of the actual user interface. It's a GIS-based tool, runs on top of ArcGIS. It runs on top of the cloud. It allows any end user to input their data. So this is specific to the Madera Irrigation District. We know exactly across thousands of fields at sub-acre level what fields are being fed by what conveyance systems. We allow them to input data. So we just called through the last 20 years of historic water available for recharge. So the simple idea here is take excess flood waters, put it on fields. You can do as many unlimited scenarios as you want. It's all automatic. It takes about 10 seconds to do or so. The key is to figure out what places should we put that water. And you can allow the tool to find the sites for you. Here we're having it specify, find me 125,000 acre feet of storage in a typical wet year. It finds those sites automatically. It force ranks them across multiple criteria. Every grape field is not created equal. Every walnut field is not created equal. It does all that in real time, in a matter of seconds. You can click on individual sites. You can see the site details. It does dynamic reporting. You can run and iterate scenarios as much as you want. The key is to know, are we being sustainable? So there's additional functionality here. I'm not going to belabor it. If anyone wants to ask questions, I'm happy to talk about it. The key here, of course, is can we solve California's water challenges? And I think that the most important thing about this is we went from concept to building the tool in about 12 months. I spent 6 months talking to people because it was so important to hear from the end user what they needed. We didn't build anything until we were actually told what they needed. It took us about 6 months to build. Now the tool is actually being used by a multitude of different stakeholders, including the 2 irrigation districts that helped pilot the tool. We recently just had a webinar because 24 different water agencies in California wanted to be able to use this tool, which is great. We're really excited. We actually think it could have really transformative impact for water availability in California. And I will just say really quickly, we do a bunch of other stuff as well on water in many different locales throughout the nation. A lot of work in Texas as well, but also internationally. And the goal has been, you got to give people tools that they will actually use. And there has to be an incentive to use those tools. And for us, that's been the key. Thank you.